Well, this is becoming a regular thing now. The Pittsburgh Steelers are holding out for these last-minute comebacks, seemingly regularly at this point, but they pull it off yet again on Sunday Night Football against the Baltimore Ravens. Second time they play the Ravens this year, and they win in Baltimore 16-13 on a touchdown scored by Najee Harris with less than a minute remaining. And they managed to hold Baltimore off from the next minute of the game. Minkah Fitzpatrick ends the game. Johnny on the spot once again, always in the right place at the right time. He closes out the game with an interception of Tyler Huntley, who was playing for the injured Lamar Jackson. Some takeaways from this game. Man, it's wild how hard this team plays. This team is just so fantastic about staying in the game throughout the course of the full 60 minutes and being able to make those plays when they need to at the very end of the game. They have one game-winning drive in them seemingly every week late in the fourth quarter. That just make things interesting. I was ready to kind of bail on this team. And when I say bail, I mean go into casual fan mode a little bit for the rest of the season. At the point when they were losing all those games early in the year, I was ready to say, all right, time to look forward to the draft, trying to try a plan ahead as opposed to focus on winning games this year. And Pittsburgh's done everything they have to just keep bringing you back in, keep bringing you back in. Not just in the season overall, but in every game, it seems like they do something late in the game to just make you have to continue to watch. You can never walk away, you can never look away, because there's always an opportunity for something crazy to happen with this team. They're currently 8-8. They have a chance to make the playoffs. I think they have to have the Bills beat the Pats, I'm pretty sure. And the other one was the Jets beat the Dolphins, I think. I think those are the ones that need to happen for them to make the playoffs. And of course, they have to beat the Browns as well. They're playing at home against Cleveland next week. The Browns beat them earlier this year, which it could be Brissett at quarterback. This time around, it will be Deshaun Watson, unless the Browns decide to sit him for some reason. But yeah, Pittsburgh has a shot to make the playoffs, and the odds have gone up pretty significantly. I think they entered today with like a 2% chance, and then it was a 5% chance after the 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. windows closed. They had like a 5% chance. I'm sure it's much higher than that now, but still not, I wouldn't say significant, but still much higher than what it was going into the day. Looking at this game, some takeaways specifically from this game. I thought Pickett was obviously great towards the end of the game. He made some nice throws, the extended plays. He made the right decisions at the very end of the game. As a whole, I don't think this was a good performance from him particularly. I think there were times where he mismanaged the pocket. There was a moment late in the second to last drive of the game for Pittsburgh where he takes a sack. He held the ball for over 3 seconds, takes a sack instead of throwing the ball away. Just blows my mind. It didn't make any sense to me why you're taking a sack in that situation when you can just throw the ball out of bounds. It was stunning to me that he made such a poor decision like that. And those kind of plays are littered all over his tape. So I'm not a huge fan of Kenny Pickett at this point in time, but I do recognize the fact that he has been absolutely clutch late in games for us this year, especially down the stretch here as we close out the season. So for Pickett, I'm kind of back and forth on his play, really. There's some really nice throws at the intermediate and deep levels that make you say, oh yes, this is why we take this guy in the first round. And there's some plays that make you wonder, yeah, does this guy even have the basic understandings of how to manage the pocket? You know, he kind of flip-flop back and forth between the really extreme ends of the spectrum, the really good plays and the really horrible ones. So I'm kind of back and forth on Pickett. I think that's just what you have to kind of live with a rookie quarterback, especially in this year's weak draft class. The running game was alive and well tonight, something that we haven't said about the Pittsburgh Steelers rushing attack in feels like years at this point. But Najee Harris, 22 carries for 111 yards, averaging 5 yards per carry. Critical, absolutely critical this game for Pittsburgh winning. Also keeping my fantasy team alive in our championship game. Probably still going to lose, but he really brought me back from the brink with his play tonight. And then Jaylen, of course, has been a spark for this team as well. 12 carries for 76 yards, 6.3 yards per carry. He's the more dynamic of the two running backs. Najee Harris, a little bit more power, a little bit more contact balance to run between the tackles. And in the passing game, no one really stood out. They spread the ball around pretty evenly. There were 6 players who had at least 2 receptions in this game, as opposed to Baltimore, who only had 2 players with multiple receptions. Pittsburgh had 6. Pat Freiermuth leading the way, 3 catches for 36 yards, and most among all Steelers receivers, followed by Deontay Johnson, 2 for 35. Steven Sims, 3 for 34. George Pickens, 2 for 29. Jaylen Warren, 3 for 22. Najee Harris, 2 for 12, and the game-winning touchdown. Overall, I think we can consider Pat Freiermuth to be a massive hit from last year's draft class. He's been phenomenal for us this year, just extremely consistent. I don't think he'll ever be a high-end tight end like Mark Andrews, who had 9 catches for 100 yards in this game on 9 targets. I don't think he'll ever get to that level. He just doesn't have that kind of dynamic skill set that you will find in a guy like Mark Andrews or a Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Darren Waller. He's not going to be that kind of player. But I think he could get to that Zach Ertz kind of level where he's still like an 800 to 1,000 yard tight end basically every year, but never like true all-pro, but still a very solid cornerstone on offense. I think he can get to that level based on what we've seen from him this year with a very limited offense, which, again, hopefully you don't see this offense again next year. Hopefully we get a new offensive coordinator. TJ Watt, a little bit back and forth this game, some good, some bad, but overall looking much more like his usual self than he had in the past couple weeks. Last week I thought was also a good game for him if I remember correctly, but prior to that he had a couple on and off nights. But tonight, looking much more like his usual self. Cameron Heyward came in. I know he didn't have like a killer stat line, but he made some critical plays as well. 4 tackles, 1 solo, but he was in on a lot of run stops and thought he made a really good job. Did a really good job impacting Baltimore's run game, even though they did average 5.5 yards per carry with J.K. Dobbins, 70 carries for 93 yards. They gashed us a few times, and I still think our run defense has a lot to improve on. They were running it at TJ Watt quite a bit, frankly. They were letting him clear upfield with his rush and then going in behind him. So I think there's a lot to improve for Pittsburgh, especially at the second level. Like the linebackers, we need new starting linebackers, frankly. We really just do. We need some help at the second level of the defense to really shut down the running game. Because we have someone like Cameron Heyward in the middle who's really good against the run. We have TJ Watt, who's usually a pretty solid run defender. We just haven't had that help at the second level to really shore up issues when there are gaps. So that's something to keep an eye on. And of course, like I said, Fitzpatrick, a game-sealing interception. That's kind of my game recap, I guess you could say. Takeaways, again, great to see Najee Harris playing well. He's always been a good player. I just don't think he's a complete player that you would need to have as a long-term feature back. So I'll be interested to see the splits between him and Warren going forward, how that will work out. Warren is the more dynamic player, but I'm not sure he's an every down. Well, let me put it this way: he's definitely not an every down back either. So I think Harris and Warren will split carries more evenly in the future, assuming we can kind of justify that with all the contracts and stuff like that. May be able to keep both of them on the roster. I think you'll see a more even split between these two going forward in future years, because frankly, running the ball with Najee Harris 20 to 30 times a game usually doesn't work out that well. But we'll see how they manage the running backs in the future. Again, and I love Najee Harris as a player, and I love him as a personality. I just don't think he has that dynamic skill set to really be a guy you want to feed the ball 25 times a game. I mean, you watch Baltimore's defenders, and you watch how fast they run, you watch how fast Najee Harris is running to the corner. It looks like Najee Harris is running in slow motion compared to everyone else. He just doesn't have that burst to really beat you to the edge or really threaten you to get past that second level really quickly and get to the third level against the safeties and corners if their corners are playing off. So I think you have to evaluate how you use the running back position a little bit this offseason. And again, just looking at this game, 34 minutes of possession for Pittsburgh compared to only 25 minutes and 40 seconds for Baltimore. 22 first downs for Pittsburgh, 15 for Baltimore. No turnovers for Pittsburgh, only 1 for Baltimore, and 351 yards of total offense for Pittsburgh, or total yards for Pittsburgh compared to 240 total yards for Baltimore. So Pittsburgh, on the stat sheet, did look like the better team in this game, although, and even third down efficiency, 10 for 16 for Pittsburgh compared to 5 for 12 for Baltimore. So Pittsburgh had the better game statistically, and it showed up in the score at the very end of the game, even though it was much closer than probably it should have been if Pittsburgh had more of a competent offense in this one. But yeah, that's my game recap, guys. I'm pretty excited that we actually got the win here. I wasn't really expecting it considering how things looked early in the game, especially in the first half. But overall, it's a victory Monday for Pittsburgh, and you can't really ask for anything more.